The creation, Adam and Eve, the beginning and the fall. In the primordial silence, before time began to be measured, God traced the universe with his voice. From nothingness, the infinite cosmos emerged, the sky spread out like a starry cloak, the earth rose from the chaotic waters, and the oceans found their boundaries. With meticulous design, the Creator gave life to all creatures, birds that soared through the skies, beasts that roamed the fields, and fish that danced in the depths. But amidst all this magnificence, something, or someone was missing. Then, with special care, God formed man from the dust of the earth. Adam, the first of his kind, was molded in divine image and likeness. His breath was the very breath of God, infusing him not only with life, but also with dominion over all creation. Eden became his home, a garden of endless delights, where rivers of crystal clear water nourished trees with exquisite fruits and harmony reigned in every corner. However, amidst this perfection, God noticed a shadow in Adam's heart. Although Lord of all creatures, his gaze reflected a profound loneliness. "It is not good for man to be alone," declared the Creator. And in an act of infinite love, while Adam was deeply asleep, he took one of his ribs and from it formed Eve, the mother of all living beings. Her beauty was the perfect complement to Adam, and together they were crowned as sovereigns of Eden. God granted them absolute freedom. They could eat from any tree, enjoy all the pleasures of paradise, except one. In the center of the garden stood the tree of knowledge of good and evil, whose fruit was forbidden to them. "The day you eat from it, you will surely die," the Creator warned them. For a time, they obeyed without question. But in the shadows of Eden, the deceiver lurked. Satan, the fallen angel, took the form of a serpent with shining scales and a seductive voice. One night, while Eve was walking near the forbidden tree, the serpent slithered up to her feet. "So God has told you not to eat from any tree in the garden?" she asked with false innocence. Eve, confident, repeated the divine prohibition. Then the serpent unleashed its most powerful lie: "You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." His words resonated in Eve's heart as she contemplated the fruit. It seemed more beautiful than ever, promising wisdom and power. Doubt turned into desire, and desire into action. He took the fruit and bit into it. In that instant, something changed forever. Eve, with the juice still on her lips, ran towards Adam. "Try it," she insisted, showing him the apple. Adam, torn between his love for his companion and the divine command, finally gave in. Upon biting the fruit, their eyes opened in a new and terrible way. For the first time, they felt shame at seeing themselves naked, and they ran to cover themselves with fig leaves. The sound of their footsteps fleeing through the garden alerted the Creator. "Where are you?" called God, not because he was unaware of their whereabouts, but to give them a chance to confess. When they finally faced the truth, the consequences were irrevocable. The serpent was cursed to crawl on its belly for all eternity. Adam and Eve, expelled from Eden, would now face an existence marked by the pain of childbirth, the sweat of labor, and the certainty of death. The gates of paradise closed behind them, guarded by cherubim with flaming swords. Thus began the history of humanity, with an act of disobedience that changed the course of creation. Original sin, like an indelible stain, would be passed on to all future generations. The garden was left behind, turned into a distant dream, as Adam and Eve took their first steps in a now hostile world, where the memory of Eden would be both a comfort and an eternal torment. The first human crime, Cain and Abel, the seed of the curse. After their exile from Eden, Adam and Eve faced a wild and hostile land. With their own hands, they built the first human home, a refuge against the wind and the night. There, amidst the sweat and dust, their children were born: Abel, whose name resonated like a breath of life, and Cain, who carried in his essence the desire for possession. For years, the family lived in peace. Abel, endowed with a special sensitivity, became a shepherd. His hands caressed the sheep tenderly, and his heart naturally inclined towards the divine. Cain, on the other hand, worked the land. Strong and stubborn, he pulled fruits from the ground with effort, but his gaze often wandered to the horizon, as if yearning for something more. The offering that divided the world. When the day came to present their gifts to God, the brothers took opposite paths. Abel chose the first lamb from his flock, fat and without defect. His sacrifice was offered with humility, the flames ascending to the sky like a sigh of devotion. Cain, on the other hand, gathered withered ears of grain and small fruits, what was left of his harvest. His offering did not arise from love, but from duty, or perhaps from disdain. God accepted Abel's sacrifice, the fire consumed it eagerly. But the flames ignored Cain's offering, leaving it intact on the altar. The divine rejection burned more than any fire. The murder that marked history. The following days were a whirlwind of resentment. Cain saw Abel blessed by their parents, loved by God, and the poison of envy coursed through his veins. One afternoon, with deceptively sweet voice, he invited him to the field. "Brother, come, help me with the harvest." Abel, confident, followed him. But when he bent down to pick up a tool, Cain raised a sharp stone and smashed it against his head. Once. Twice. Until Abel's body lay still, his blood soaking the land he had loved so much. The eternal curse. Then, the voice of God thundered from the heavens. "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain, trembling, tried to lie. "Am I my brother's keeper?" But the earth itself cried out. The blood of Abel cried out from the dust, and God declared, "Listen, the blood of your brother cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and you will wander without rest." Cain, terrified, pleaded, "My punishment is too great to bear." And although God protected him with a mark so that no one would kill him, he condemned him to perpetual exile. The blood legacy. With this act, sin took root in the human heart forever. Death had entered the world, and with it, the envy that corrodes the soul, the violence that justifies itself, the lie that tries to hide the guilt. Abel became the prerogative of the innocent sacrifices, while Cain, the first murderer, inaugurated a lineage marked by the curse. Humanity would never be the same. The Ark of Noah, the flood that purified the earth. The corrupted world. After generations of sin, humanity had plunged into absolute wickedness. Violence, idolatry, and corruption permeated every heart until God decided to act. But amidst all that darkness, there was a man who found grace in his eyes, Noah, a righteous and obedient man in the midst of a wicked world. The divine order. God revealed himself to Noah with an extraordinary command. "Make yourself an ark of sturdy wood. Because I am going to bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh in which there is the spirit of life under heaven." Genesis 6 verses 14 to 17. The design was specific, 300 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high, approximately 137 meters x 23 by 14, with 3 floors, a skylight, and a single door. A colossal ship for an unprecedented mission. The construction, faith in the midst of ridicule. Imagine the scene: Noah, now elderly, working for 120 years under the sun and rain, hammering gopherwood planks, cypress, while his neighbors mocked him. A flood? If it has never rained. According to some traditions, before the flood there was only dew. But Noah persevered, preaching righteousness while the ark took shape. The passengers of the ark. The critical day arrived. God ordered Noah to take his family, 8 people in total, Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. Pairs of clean and unclean animals, 7 of the former, 2 of the latter, according to Genesis 7 verse 2. Food for everyone. The spectacle must have been overwhelming: elephants, lions, snakes, and birds entering in line, guided by an invisible force, as the skies darkened. The deluge, 40 days of chaos. Then, the floodgates of heaven opened. Torrential waters fell ceaselessly, while the fountains of the abyss. The water covered the highest mountains, and all life outside the ark perished. For 40 days and nights, the ark was tossed by giant waves, while inside, Noah and his family cared for the animals under the light of the single window. The end of the trial. After 150 days adrift, the waters began to recede. The ark came to rest on Mount Ararat, now in Turkey, and Noah sent out a raven and then a dove to find dry land. When the dove returned with an olive leaf, he knew the punishment was over. The Rainbow Pact. Upon exiting, Noah built an altar and sacrificed pure animals in gratitude. God then established an eternal covenant. I will never again curse the ground because of man. I will set my bow in the clouds, as a sign of this covenant. Genesis 9 verses 11 to 13. The rainbow became a symbol of mercy. Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, the punishment of pride. In the centuries that followed the flood, humanity multiplied once more, spreading across the land like a raging river. Among the emerging civilizations, none shone with as much splendor and arrogance as Babylon, a kingdom of clay bricks and golden ambitions, ruled by the proudest of men. Nimrod, the king who defied heaven. Nimrod was not a mere monarch, he was a hunter of men and beasts, a giant of iron will whose name resonated like thunder among the peoples. His ambition knew no bounds. He had united cities, enslaved nations, and erected monuments to his own glory. But nothing was enough. One day, he heard about God, the same one who had wiped the world with water and saved only Noah. Instead of trembling, Nimrod felt a spark of defiance. If he reigns in the heights, I will touch the sky with my own hands, he swore. And thus was born his most audacious project, the Tower of Babel, a construction so colossal that it would pierce the clouds and allow him to look God in the eye. The tower that wanted to be God. Thousands of slaves set to work. Bricks baked in fire, pitch as mortar, stairs that disappeared into the mist. The tower grew day and night, a spiral of pride that rose above the plain of Shinar. The men, united under a single language, believed that nothing was impossible for them. But God saw the tower. And it was not their height that troubled him, but the hearts of those men. They did not seek spiritual elevation, but to usurp the Creator. The final challenge. One afternoon, while Nimrod was supervising the works, a voice echoed from above. Stop. This tower is an insult to the heavens. Nimrod, instead of kneeling, laughed. He took his bow and shot an arrow into the sky, shouting, If you exist, God, stop this arrow. The silence lasted a second. So, the sky exploded. A thunder shook the ground, followed by a hurricane-force wind that tore the scaffolding apart. The foundations of the tower trembled, and an earthquake split the ground into smoking cracks. The workers fell to their knees, terrified. But the real punishment was yet to come. Suddenly, the words became incomprehensible. A bricklayer asked his companion for water, but he only heard guttural sounds. A foreman shouted orders, but his men looked at him with bewildered eyes. God had confused their languages, and chaos took over Babel. Nimrod, from the top of his unfinished tower, saw his empire crumble. The workers, unable to communicate, separated into hostile tribes, abandoning the construction. Babylon, once united, fractured into 1,000 pieces. The fate of Nimrod. The legend says that Nimrod did not escape divine punishment. After losing his tower and his kingdom, he was condemned to wander as a ghost beyond death. Some say that his tormented spirit still haunts the ruins of Babel, cursed for all eternity. And so, the Tower of Babel became a symbol of human hubris, a reminder that no earthly power can compare to the heavens. The cities of sin. In the Jordan Valley, where the Dead Sea lies today, 5 prosperous but utterly corrupt cities stood: Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Bela. Among them, Sodom and Gomorrah were the most infamous, where sin was not only tolerated but celebrated with feasts of blood and depravity. Violence, idolatry, and above all, extreme sexual perversion, the term sodomy originates here, were the order of the day. God decided that the cry of his victims demanded justice. Before destroying them, God revealed it to Abraham, his faithful servant, who negotiated with him. Will you destroy the righteous along with the wicked? And if there are 50 righteous? Or 10? Genesis 18 verses 23 to 32. God promised to spare the cities if he found even 10 innocent people. But there weren't any. The night that shook Sodom. 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the form of young men. Lot, Abraham's nephew, hosted them in his house, but soon an enraged mob surrounded the dwelling. Hand those men over to us so that we may know them. Genesis 19 verse 5. The term "know" here was a euphemism for a forced group orgy. Lot, desperate, offered his 2 virgin daughters, a morally questionable act, but the mob wanted blood. The angels blinded the attackers and gave the final order: run away with your family. Run away with your family. Don't look back. Don't look back. The sulfur holocaust. At dawn, God rained fire and brimstone from the heavens. Genesis 19 verse 24. It was not a simple fire, it was a chemical apocalypse. The ground opened up, the underground bitumen exploded, and the cities were reduced to ashes in minutes. Lot's wife, disobeying, looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. The unexpected miracle. After the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham and Sarah wandered through arid lands, bearing the weight of an unfulfilled divine promise, an heir. Sarah, now old and barren, watched in pain as the years passed without her womb blooming. In a moment of desperation, Abraham came to repudiate her, believing that God had abandoned him. But then, on a golden-hued sunset, the three angels appeared under the oak of Mamre. "Where is Sarah, your wife?" they asked. "There, in the tent," replied Abraham, unaware that, behind the canvas, Sarah was listening and laughing skeptically. "I will return to you at the appointed time, and Sarah will have a son," announced the heavenly messenger. And so it was. Sarah, with her 90-year-old body rejuvenated by divine grace, gave birth to Isaac, whose name meant laughter, because God had turned her mockery into joy. Isaac, the son of the promise. Isaac grew up as a bright and wise child, loved not only by his parents but by the entire village. He learned the sciences of the Chaldeans, the language of the stars, and the kindness that only a chosen heart could possess. His mere existence was a walking miracle, a reminder that God fulfills the impossible. But then, the order that froze the blood. One night, while Abraham was praying under a starry sky, the voice of God echoed in his chest. "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. There you will offer him as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I will tell you about." Genesis 22 verse 2. Abraham collapsed. His hands trembled like leaves in the wind. How could the God of the promise ask him to destroy his own son? Was this the reward for his faithfulness? But there was no explanation. Just silence and obedience. The journey to the mountain of terror. At dawn, Abraham set out with Isaac and 2 servants. For 3 days of marching, each step towards Moriah was an agony. Isaac, innocent, carried the wood for the sacrifice. Abraham, the knife and the fire. "Father, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" asked Isaac clearly. Abraham stifled a groan. His words fell like stones. "God will provide the lamb, my son." But in his eyes, Isaac saw the truth. The altar of pain. At the top of the mountain, Abraham built the altar with bleeding stones. To this day, Jewish tradition says that the rocks of Moriah cry. He tied Isaac with ropes, but the boy did not resist. His gaze was not one of fear, but of a faith that transcended the soul. "Father, if this is the will of God, I accept it." The knife glinted in the sun. Abraham raised his arm, and in that instant, the scream that stopped the world. "Abraham! Abraham!" shouted the angel from heaven. "Don't reach out your hand over the boy." Abraham trembled. Through tears, he saw a ram tangled in a nearby thicket. God had provided. The sacrifice was completed with the animal, but the true Holocaust had been Abraham's heart, broken, obedient, and faithful. The legacy of silence. Isaac never spoke of that day, but he carried the marks of the ropes on his wrists into old age. Sarah died shortly after, they say, from the shock of learning what almost happened. The Jewish people remembered this trial as the moment when Abraham chose God above all, even above the love of a father.